final game. Hey everybody, final game, Game 7 of the NBA Eastern Conference semifinals between the visiting Washington Wizards and the Boston Celtics will get underway. So I wanted to get this live stream up about 30 minutes or so long, maybe a little longer than that, because I'm getting a number of questions about the Vegas deal, but also there's interesting news around here regarding, hey Barry, how you doing? Regarding NFL free agents and draft picks. First of all, this is some rather sad news, but he's okay. Patrick Mahomes, the person drafted by the Texas Tech quarterback drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, number 10 in the NFL draft, and the client of Lee Steinberg, was robbed on Sunday, but he's fine. And I look at it this way: basically, with what he's about to get from the Chiefs, he's going to be able to recover much faster than normal. But that said, thank God it was just his property that was taken, and not his life, or that he was injured in any kind of way. The big news around here for Falcons fans is that Garrett Scantling was waived. And you're saying, well, who's Garrett Scantling? Garrett Scantling is a 6'3", 205-pound wide receiver who was a decathlon star at the University of Georgia. And after 5 years, he basically forego a football scholarship and forego he forgoed playing football to pursue track at Georgia. And after doing that and then graduating, he was at home back in Jacksonville, where he went to high school and grew up, Jacksonville, Florida, and had an inkling to basically try out for the Atlanta Falcons. Because remember, he did play football in high school, some. So there was a lot of noise, being made about his return. Now, well, the sad news is after he was signed by the Falcons to try out about 2 months ago, thereabouts, he was cut, or as they say in the parlance, waived, and his name is the first one that comes up on the waiver system transactions in the NFL. Scantling, Garrett, wide receiver, Georgia. Waiver requests. And as far as what happened, well, if you haven't played football in a while, since going from high school to pros, and jumping over the college experience as a college football player, it's pretty hard to just cold turkey jump in to an NFL team, and then catch passes and take a hit. Some people, like Ronaldo, Skeets, and Nehemiah, have done it, which demonstrates just how extraordinary that kind of two-sport leap is, particularly with respect to track and football. Because, as Mike Haynes pointed out to me at the NFL annual meeting, Mike Haynes, of course, the famous Raiders cornerback and safety, hey, he, talking about in this case John Ross, the wide receiver from Washington, went to the Cincinnati Bengals eventually, may be able to run, but can he catch? And if you've got to figure that if Garrett could catch, he would not have been cut. So the question is, will he be given another shot someplace else? What will he do? And that's a good question. I'm going to check his Twitter account real quick and see if he's given us any indication of what he's going to do. Because if you have that kind of speed, and you can be trained to be effective as a pass catcher or a special teams player, you can be an effective contributor on an NFL team. You really can. So let's see if, right here, let's see if Mr. Garrett Scantling has said anything. And his Twitter account is Never Limit Yourself, University of Georgia, SEC champ, All-American, hashtag Dream Chaser. And he says, I mean, seriously, y'all better have the millions. Conversation now, unbelievable determination. UGA track. He's talking about someone's flow. Rookie camp. Let's keep working in brotherhood. And let's see here. He's got nothing back at the Atlanta Falcons for a day. Former Dogs. Garrett Scantling in Athens for Memorial. Go Dogs. Nothing about really how things are going, but it says grind never stops. This ain't track anymore. New beginnings. Hashtag new beginnings. This is Mr. Scantling working out right here. And his Twitter account. And getting a good goal. And he tweeted, grind never stops. This ain't track anymore. New beginnings. So, hey, I wish Mr. Scantling all the best and Godspeed. The hopes that he finds a new home in the National Football League, Okay, so let's see what other news there is going on. Hey, how are you regarding the National Football League? We have the Buffalo Bills have put 2 on waivers, Junior Sylvester, a linebacker out of Toledo, and West Virginia defensive back Jeremy Tyler. Chicago put wide receiver Kermit Whitfield on waivers. A lot of wide receivers in Chicago. Cleveland, Josh Butte, guard, and Detroit put Pierce Burton on tackle on waivers. Flying through here, we scroll down to what the Raiders have done. And by the way, the claiming deadline is for people put on waivers, players put on waivers, is 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, the 16th, okay? Today is the 15th. Now, we have terminations by waiver. We don't have the Raiders having put anyone on waivers here, unless I missed the list, and I have not. I'm looking directly on the NFL website. I'm not quoting anybody else. This is waiver requests, all or no recall. So that's it. You're done. So so the Raiders don't have anyone on that list at this time. And termination of vested veterans, no Raider listings. Terminations via waiver system, nope. Active list additions. We scroll down, see what the Falcons have actually added 3 players. They've added Reggie Davis, wide receiver out of Georgia. So basically, the Falcons took a Georgia Bulldog and got rid of a Georgia Bulldog. They gave Garrett Scantling his walking papers in favor of Reggie Davis, another Georgia wide receiver. Interesting. They also signed Matt Sims, quarterback out of Tennessee, and nose tackle Tene Tupo out of Washington, who actually, amazingly, he went down that far, but I think the knock on him was his size. But if you think of the Falcons and the success that they've had, or they expect to have, and the Chiefs have had with Dontari Poe, watch out for Tupo, okay? He may emerge as the steal of the free agency period. Watch that. Now, scrolling down as far as the Raiders, we have 1 listing. Marcus McWilson, Kentucky defensive back. And so, I'm getting requests regarding the Falcons stadium construction update. Right now, it's still delayed because of the roof issue. I don't know if that issue is in the process of being resolved. The original plan, as Mr. Blank, Arthur Blank, the owner of the Atlanta Falcons, told me last year, was to have a July 11th soft opening, and that has been pushed back as well. I need to follow up with the Falcons to learn when the new soft opening is expected to be. I haven't heard that yet, but stay tuned. So, the Niners, by the way, have added Colorado defensive back Aquilo Witherspoon. So, some interesting pickups here in these free agency signings, so stay tuned there. Now, we will go to the matter of something else that's been burning on my soul right now. It has to do with basically the the question regarding, oh, a question that was asked of me via email, and it is having to do with the Athletics, and it's from Brian Quello, who asks, Zinni, wanted to ask you your opinion, your thoughts on the Raiders possibly dragging their feet in Las Vegas to see if the A's announce they're going to downtown, and if they do, the Raiders and NFL will re-enter discussions in the Coliseum land. Do you think I'm off base with this thought process, or could something like this happen? Well, I think that could happen. And, however, I mean, let's think about this. If that does happen, it can't just happen out in the open because of the idea that the Las Vegas Stadium Authority minders and the governor's office in Las Vegas would have that the Raiders were taking them for a ride, in much the same way. I mean, I know where you're going to go with this, okay? But just bear with me, all right? And bail out, okay? I'm not saying it, given what we've seen thus far, that scenario isn't possible. But if it comes to pass that the deal can't work, I think the Raiders would point to issues there as, ostensibly as some kind of cover for the fact that, well, not so much cover. They would point to issues in Las Vegas as the reason they would go back to Oakland. But of course, hey, it just happens to be the Coliseum land is available. That would be a fantastic development, and it would right a whole lot of wrongs. Is it possible? Yes, it is very possible. Is it happening right now? I don't see indications that it is going to happen, but I do see that the Vegas deal has enough. Here's the problem with the Vegas deal. I've said it once, I'll say it again. The time frame is too tight. And some have pointed to and alleged that Oakland Raiders president Mark Bedane is trying to force the Las Vegas Stadium Authority to rush things. Actually, Bedane isn't doing that just because it's the Raider way. No, it has nothing to do with that at all. It's not a matter of the Raider way at all. The Raider way does not apply here. What applies here is the Southern Nevada Tourism and Infrastructure Act, and that part of the act which specifically says that, and I pointed to this before, that if the documents, all 12 of them, are not completed by September 1st of next year, then the entire NFL stadium effort reverts to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. That's what happens there. So, no, I don't see that. Let me go to the watch page. I didn't do that. I started off just talking, and I usually go to the YouTube watch page and, set everything up and all that. I did not do that. So bear with me for one moment while I do that. Because now we've got the salient NFL news out of the way. Oh, by the way, did you know NFL and Twitter signed a deal? I still hold that the NFL's best course of action is to have a system whereby multiple platform owners like Twitter and YouTube and Zinni62, not kidding, can join forces and have a comprehensive broadcast system of NFL games rather than what they have currently, okay? That's my point. And also, the NFL ought to have its own platform. It really should. It shouldn't be basically positioning itself to be the slave of another platform. It should have, just like it has its own website, its own Twitter stream and everything else, its own place online on NFL.com where you can watch NFL contests online. And that should be the home for everything. They shouldn't be sending it someplace else, but I know the NFL wants to make money. Okay? But the NFL could use its own platform, drive its own traffic numbers up, and base its negotiations from that position of statistical strength rather than on someone else's platform, which is just not a great idea at all. I hold, and especially when anyone can code their own Twitter style platform. Really, you can't. In fact, take a look at the recently killed Identica. It's really Identica. The stream is good. Go to the watch page, and here we are. And let's see here. And Barry Lee says, Jabbar Esquist, is anywhere the A's moving out of the Coliseum? Will the Raiders be able to acquire land? How will they get their $77 million back? First of all, Jabber, good question, but I'm not convinced that $77 million is actually from the Raiders directly. So I don't believe it's something they have to give back. And now knowing the Raiders as I do, I believe the deal was such that either if it was money left over from when they were in business with Las Vegas Sands and Sheldon Adelson, here's some front money, right? And they used part of that to buy the land. But also remember this, that land has to be turned over to the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. Because the Las Vegas Stadium Authority is going to own, if the stadium is built, both the stadium and the land beneath it. Okay? So, now, are the Raiders long gone? Is there any chance they stay? Yeah, Morales 2-4-8-1. If the deal in Las Vegas falls apart, the Raiders would have to seek the alternative of, the first alternative, really, staying in Oakland. And the NFL is not going to publicly announce the Raiders' failures because, absent Goodell's slip to me at the Charlotte NFL owners meeting last year, they being the NFL, are not in the business of trying to make their member clubs look bad. That's not the way it works. So, let's see here. Now, there was no deal signed yet, but the idea has always been that the A's are going to go to Howard Terminal or Laney College, really Howard Terminal. That was never really changed. That was the mayor of Oakland kind of using the A's as a well, she would get mad if I said this, but the bottom line is the mayor tells the businesses where to go in the city. If the mayor wants the A's at Howard Terminal and then wants to keep the Raiders at the Coliseum, she can engineer that. And she may very well be trying to engineer that behind the scenes. But my point is that it didn't look like it. Okay? It looked like she was trying to basically engineer a reason to get the Raiders out of Oakland because they weren't going to stay on any terms other than her own. That's not the way you do it. You have to be flexible. And the way to be flexible is to say, all right, I want the A's at Howard Terminal, therefore the A's will have that, and the Raiders will have this thing. And we'll have a deadline. And here's the timelines that work for everybody. That's how you do that. So, now, the problem now, okay, how would you solve the problem where the Athletics would play? And what would have to be done is, once the Raiders had the land, a deal would have to be struck such that the A's could, play out their string, and at the same and while they're playing out their string, at least maybe over a couple of years, construction starts, and then the A's move to ostensibly Giants Stadium. Now that would require payment if the Giants allowed that. The big question is, would the Giants allow that? All right. If the Giants would not allow that, then we have to start looking at an alternative ball field, like perhaps something at Cal Memorial Stadium. That is not an easy situation to work out. My issue is that all parties were not brought into a room to work out a solution. Dave Cabal over here, Mark Davis over there, and the mayor over here, and so on. A regional perspective, San Francisco Mayor Edley over here, so it becomes a regional effort to keep the Raiders in Oakland, right? And so the mayor could say, hey, look, we'll help out by paying this and helping the Giants with that and that sort of thing. Then it becomes something doable. But without that kind of regional cooperation, it becomes difficult. It becomes difficult. But if you don't try at all, it's impossible. Let's see here. More money, but having someone else do the job. Yeah. Now, Falcons fan says, what are the chances of the Falcons getting back to the Super Bowl this season, if not the next? I think very good for one reason, Falcons fan 408. because the new secret sauce of the Falcons isn't so secret when you think about it, and that's the addition of offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian. And you would say, well, so what? Well, it does mean that he's using, because Coach Quinn, Dan Quinn, has said so, the same terminology. But he brings his own ideas and approach, which means that on a 3rd and 1, if the Falcons are down, by a touchdown in the third quarter, you may see a different, depending on tendencies and formations, approach from him than you would see, say, from Kyle Shanahan. Whereas Shanahan maybe would have passed out of play action, perhaps you would have had Sarkisian using some sort of unusual read option design look to then achieve a wide open receiver, right? Something creative. That's Sark for you. So Steve Sarkisian, to me, is more along the lines of Lane Kiffin in his scheme approach. A lot more, in other words, am I saying he's more creative than Kyle Shanahan? I'm not trying to diss Kyle Shanahan, but Sarkisian definitely has come up with some fascinating approaches to offensive football over the years. So, and that makes him makes the Falcons offense unpredictable. If you can't know where an offense is going, it becomes what? It becomes harder to stop. So, yeah, I think the Falcons, given their defensive improvements, could indeed return to the Super Bowl, if not the NFC Championship game. But they're in a division that is demonstrably stronger. The Buccaneers, look at what the Bucs have done in adding O.J. Edwards from Alabama, and then Deshaun Jackson, and then the Penn State wide receiver as well. So they've added speed on offense. They have gotten faster, okay? They are, on paper, dangerous. And then look at the Carolina Panthers, also on paper faster and more dangerous. And you've got the Saints with their acquisitions and the need to redesign what they do given their one-loss record. So it's not going to be easy sledding for the Falcons in their own division. No way. But do they have a chance to return as NFC champions? I wouldn't bet against them. So, hey, Octavio, how you doing? And Barry Lee, if I didn't say hello, hello, how are you? And then, let's see here. Joseph Jones, let me see. I got Falcons fan now. 916 Cougar Nation says, why did I criticize Just Blog Baby on my last video? They literally just relayed info that's given to them. Well, because I didn't criticize Just Blog Baby on a personal way. I did name them, yeah. But it wasn't just Blog Baby. It's a whole set of media that ride with one piece of information. For example, the big news, and I'm glad you asked the question, 916 Cougar Nation, because the big news out of that Stadium Authority meeting, there were actually two. The first was the number of blacks that showed up to the meeting that complained that they were not in line to get a fair share of work. That was the big news because they turned out in numbers, and that wasn't reported. A. B, the parking issue that I have talked about again and again and again that adds an additional cost to the stadium development. That wasn't even focused on, in spite of the fact that you had the planner from Clark County right there. Now, if she didn't want to talk to the media, you know what? How many times have you heard the media say, well, so-and-so was not willing to comment on this, but she did say blah, 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 blah. And that's right there on the record. So that is why I made that comment. It is, to me, look, I'm not trained in media. I'm trained in urban planning and urban economics and real estate and investment finance, and that's my focus. And I've done system dynamics modeling, and now I do online marketing and reputation management. Okay, I created my own media company from the outside, and I did so, to change the subject for just a second, because I wanted to get out how I didn't like the way things were going first with in the city of Oakland. That's why I started Oakland's first blog. My point is this, and in fact that example goes back to what I'm talking about here. You don't regurgitate what you hear. You creatively dig to find out what's happening around. And you can do it now without costing you money because of the internet. This is a beautiful time to be alive. So that's why 916 Cougar Nation. Great question, and thank you for the question. And that's why I call it fake media, because that wasn't the story. All right? Anyone who knows development would tell you, hey, the Raiders aren't going to make that deadline. And yeah, Benin said that, fine. But there was a lot of other things that went on at that meeting that were not talked about in print, in their print. Mine, different story. Theirs, no. Now, Joseph Jones says, Zinni, my question is, the Raiders have barely enough room for the new stadium now, are required to build off-site parking. But do you know where the parking site would be? No land nearby. You know, Joseph, I'm glad you asked that, and someone else asked me to identify land. I pointed to Fritz's site, which was one of the 7 that was listed during the Southern Nevada Tourism and Infrastructure Committee meetings last year. And the problem with that site is, unlike the Russell Road site that was just acquired by the organization working on behalf of the Raiders, the Furtis site, owned by the Furtis brothers of Ultimate Fighting fame and casino fame, those guys, that site has truck terminals on it, all manner of building types that would have to be cleared and then paved appropriately to make, if not cleaned up toxically, to make room for a parking use, let alone anything else. And so what's the acquisition cost of that land going to be alone? You take a look at what the Raiders just spent, you'd have to say $50 million, but then you've got the clearing cost and everything else, and without putting anything on that, you're probably looking at about $60 million right there, right off the top. Here's the catch. According to the planning regulations for parking for Clark County, the owner of the use that is causing the traffic that calls for the need for the additional spaces has to also own that lot. Guess who that is? It's not the Raiders. It's the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. So there's another example of where public money is going to have to apply to this project. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This project in total is a $4 billion expense between off-site infrastructure and on-site costs, some of them pointed to and actually forced by the law that was put in place in Nevada, calling for an enclosed roof stadium. That's automatic extra cost. Ding. So, hey Octavio, how are you? And let's see here. I believe, trying to make sure I got everybody. Let's see here. Miguel Rose says, Jabber says, hey Joseph, the only land around is the Bali High Golf Course. Great point. That's a great point. And that golf course, I mean, I'm not going to guess for the FAA, but I can't imagine them slamming a parking use, right? It's parking. But the question is, what does Bali High want? Because there's a reason the FAA is the hugest of them, but then that overshadows the other question. Hey, what's the owner willing to give up, to acquire the land? So when the Raiders and the Stadium Authority turn around them, they look at land adjacent, because Clark County regulations say it has to be adjacent. That's really used and freaking expensive to buy. So that's a huge problem. And again, that gets to why I got after the other media for ignoring the story. In addition to the story regarding community benefits in the black community. That's why you have a black media now. This is a clear example of it. And that's why you've had it historically. Because a group of black folks can come to a meeting like that one and yell and scream, and then you have this media that's white and that acts like they don't exist. And that happens again and again and again. And the white media says, oh, we're not being racist. But then the black media says, wait a minute, you are, because we have this concern and you're not helping us solve our problem and tell our story. Okay? And therein lay the problem. So yeah, it was completely irresponsible. Now, so let's see here. Do you know there are any meetings scheduled with the City County Coliseum over the days? I'll find out, Barry Lee. Joseph Jones says, Zinni, would that require transportation from that area to the stadium? Great question, Joseph Jones, the second of a number of great questions you've asked. Thank you very much. or would that be within walking distance? And Jabber says, but he would, but Baha'i would cost a lot more because it's on Las Vegas Boulevard. Not to mention its other problems, Jabber. But going back to Mr. Jones' question, is yeah, it would require transportation, but again, the requirements as posted by Clark County for parking call for it to be built on an adjacent lot. So ideally, you don't want them to go a long way, right? But when you look at the land around there, that's what you're faced with. Again, you know, someone mentioned lots that are owned by MGM, but they're not adjacent at all. They're a distance. And so you're going to need some kind of bus bridge to, in fact, yeah, you're going to need a bus bridge to get people from those buildings, which MGM doesn't want to offer anyway, over to the stadium. And you can say, well, we'll wait for the monorail, but I don't recall the monorail was going to stop right at that point. And if it was, then you have to ask this question. What's the additional cost, not just of the line, but of having an adequate throughput of monorail cars going to and fro to clear out the 20,000 or so people that may park in that area and take that monorail? They're not going to walk, especially if it's hot. They're not going to want to walk, okay? Does it create additional traffic because of that? Yes, absolutely it does. It certainly does. Does that in and of itself create additional cost? Yeah, because of the volume and location of the lot, depending on the land that's selected at the end of the day. So now, Joseph Jones says, who the hell is going to walk in 110-degree heat? Exactly. You know what I'm talking about, or wait for a monorail or bus. Well, I could afford to lose a couple of pounds, but Miguel Rose says, Joseph Jones, the Las Vegas deal will require very high transportation costs in addition to high taxes and fees. Yes. And hey, John, that's Marks. How you doing? That's we're talking about stadium news. And as far as any new news, there isn't any new news that I'm aware of, except that the new news is that we have another day where Mark Bedane and Jeremy Aguillo and Stephen Hill and others are working on the Las Vegas lease, like Oakland Raiders lawyer Jan Petrelli, to move forward and try to beat the clock. Beat the clock. So that's where we're at. Oh, it's 7:42, by the way. The NBA game starts in less than 20 minutes. I'm going to break away at 10 minutes till, which means that I'm going to break away in about 8 minutes. Okay? Just giving you guys I want to hear. John Mark says the Raiders told Las Vegas Review-Journal that it intends to hire the team of Mortensen Construction and McCarthy Building Companies to build right. That's not new news. That was announced right at the Stadium Authority there, okay? And again, John Marks, to me, the real news is, will blacks get hired? That's the real news, okay? And see, I don't like to read other publications because then I'm basically making myself a slave to what their editor does. I would rather call and dig and get news myself. This is the real news. The other real news is, what will the parking cost be? All right. Yeah, and that's the other news. And right, that's right. And see, that's the other one. All right. Now, Jabber says, hey, Zinni, do you think underground parking would be considered? Yeah, I don't, that's a good question. I haven't seen in the regulations where it would not be, and in Las Vegas, there are examples of underground parking a number of places. In fact, I can think of one, just this kind of a shortcut that we leave Circus, and you want to go to Cosmopolitan, you actually leave Circus, you go out, turn, and then turn back, and you go behind Circus, down into a tunnel and out and onto the side way. I forgot the road, and it goes down. So there's all kinds of neat little passageways that lead to underground parking in some cases. So yeah, you could do that. Now, Jabber says $100 for parking. Whew. Let's see here, guys. Las Vegas can't be built. Oakland can get it done now. I agree with John Marks. With a proviso, I do think Las Vegas can be built, but it's going to take $4 billion. And the question is, and you're saying, where do I get that number from? All right. Look, we've got $2 billion for the stadium. We've got $900 million in total costs for transportation. All right, that's $3 billion right there. We've got transportation, parking structure costs. So that's between $100 million and $200 million. So already looking at $3.2 billion right there. And we've got another, I would say, $700 million in ancillary costs for everything from cost overruns to other problems that haven't arisen, that generally have to do with the fact that the streets and roads around there are not adequate to the task of handling 65,000 people. Remember, the Clark County planner had said they need to do a transportation study. They do. NDOT has done sort of a guesstimate, right? But what Las Vegas Clark County will come up with, is based more on the actual plan for the stadium that's presented to them. Oh, and then of course there's the FAA issue, which will impact the design and also the cost. All right, and so my point is, when you start adding these factors together, we are already over $3 billion, right there. We're already over $3 billion. We don't know what the roads around it can handle. You can't just plop the thing there and say, okay, play football. You can do that in Oakland because we're already ready for that. Over the last, how many decades? So this is not the 880 Nimitz corridor by any stretch of the imagination. None. So, I can only hope that blacks would get hired. Here's hoping. Blacks and Latinos, and so, and can Raiders afford Las Vegas? I don't believe they can. I really don't. It's not so much a matter of they being the Raiders. No, it's a matter of any NFL team would have this problem because Las Vegas is not appropriately planned for use of this magnitude. It just isn't. And so when you go in, you have to have, just as evidence, money to essentially remake the land so that it is. And the infrastructure. That's the problem. Okay? This isn't a matter of, oh, I'm criticizing it because of I hate yada yada yada. This is urban planning 101, folks. Sorry. So now 747. And thank you, Miguel Rose. He says, don't forget about the Raiders relocation fee. Thank you. And it's not just, hey, John, the $4 billion, it's a good question. But again, it's more than Mark Davis. And Mark Davis only owns 20% of the team, but it's far more than the Raiders. It's the Raiders plus Clark County plus the state of Nevada. So the question is, can the group handle that? Or does it want to? Not just the Raiders, but the Raiders, and the Raiders in the NFL, because they're causing these expenditures, are at fault for, trying to figure out a way to pay for them with the state and with the county of Clark County. Now, it may be, don't forget something. The mayor of Las Vegas is screaming in the background, Cashman site, Cashman site, Cashman site, Cashman site. And if you check out that site, she's got a great point. That site's actually ready for football. So if the Raiders actually got a brain, and yeah, I said it just like that because I'm being critical, and they respected the mayor of Las Vegas, they'd have went there, all right? But they didn't do that. Okay? They could still do it, but they didn't do that. If they don't, the deal falling apart in Las Vegas will be as much their undoing as anything else. Because the mayor of Las Vegas will have this consistent refrain. They should have went to Cashman. And she would be right. In fact, she's right now. Now, let's see. Aaron Blaylock says, did the league know about these problems, or are they just finding out about them as they go? They're finding about them as they go. Because for some reason that I'm still not clear of, well, I am. Mark Davis wanted to go to Vegas. There's no other reason than that. He wanted to go to Vegas. He owns the team. They're respecting his wishes, and that's the reason. Okay? They don't want to make him look bad. They made him look bad once in the case of Carson, all right? They didn't want to do it a second time. And the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda kind of helped them along by playing these land games. When the NFL was really begging the city to say, hey, you know, just give us this. And they could have. Wasn't an issue of public money. John Mark says, can anybody handle $4 billion? It's 7:50, folks. Let's see here. Raiders don't have a... Well, let's see. I won't read that one. I think, you know... I said that if anybody can solve this problem, it's Mark Bedane. And it is. Mark Bedane has the eye of the tiger. He really does. But having the eye of the tiger cannot overcome the enormous infrastructure obstacles that exist around the Russell Road site. They're huge. That area is not comfortably capable of handling NFL football without an extensive and expensive makeover. From an infrastructure perspective, it's just not there. So, it's just not there. Do you think the league feels bad for the Raiders? Yeah, I do. In general, I do. Because, and then Bayer says the NFL will help Raiders. They can't turn back now. We're going to find out to what degree that's true, because let me ask you this, Bay Area. If the NFL is going to help the Raiders, how come the NFL didn't help Dean Spanos stay in in San Diego? He needed an extra, $400 million? He didn't get it from them. So what say you that he's going to cough that up for the Raiders? Or they are, excuse me, the NFL. Just curious. I still don't see that, okay? I still don't. Hey, it's 7:51, folks. I am a minute past my deadline. The game of the century. Oh, what the heck? Why not? We gotta close out with this. I'll be back, but I gotta close out with this. Because the bottom line is, look, you can't deny at all. You cannot deny that this is the game, man. It just is. It is. Well, you hope it's the game. I hope it's the game. But it's 7:52, okay? And we've got to, excuse me. It's 7:53. It's 7:53. And what I'm trying to do here is when you type something, you ever get that buffering problem where you've got you're trying to get it so that the buffering doesn't, it basically stops, right? That's what you're trying to get. At any rate, the whole point is that I had predicted last night, and I'll say again, that John Wall is going to have himself one heck of a game. He is poised to let everybody know that he is the baddest man alive. And you can hear me saying that. So folks, in honor of what I say he's going to do, he being John Wall, I close you out with this. Alright, I'll see you. Sorry about the noise. Okay. Rick Rice says this is what happens when football is almost over. Hey, if you have a chance, go to iTunes and buy. If you haven't done so already, buy the great work by Bill Conti, Going the Distance. It's outstanding. It's American culture. It's something else. You've got to go out and get that. It's just you get the idea. You get the idea. It's Going the Distance, Rocky, iTunes, and I'm gonna get it right here for you. And so I'm not gonna play it for you again, but I'm saying that go get it for you right there. You can go and listen to it for yourself, and you can buy it on iTunes. All right, so definitely go out and get it. This is it, folks. All right, and so I am going to see you all.
Garden weeds are scoundrels. With Roundup.
Oh, a little buffering there. All right. What time is live stream tonight? Live stream. Let's see here. Live stream will be live stream. 12 mid 9 p.m. Yeah, there's the live stream. Okay, 5 p.m. All right, there. That's what time. Okay, I'll see you guys. 2 minutes to game time. I'll see you all. All right. Remember, Going the Distance. Woo-hoo! Get it. Bill Conti's the man.